Good morning, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Thursday, January 23rd, 2025 at 9 o'clock in the morning. So we're beginning our day today to have an introduction to do that. An important part with us concerning workforce and workforce.
I apologize. Need to be.
And so
Disconnecting.
this morning we have with us the president of TEC. Good morning. Welcome to the committee again. Good to see you as always. I think before we get started with you, I'll just ask the committee to introduce themselves to you. We have lots of new members this year, and so you know who. I'm sure you've taken a look to see who is here, but put a face to the name. So, John?
I'm Jonathan Cooper, live in Pownell, representing Bennington 1, which includes most of Pownell, Searsburg, Reedsboro, Stamford, and Woodford.
Great.
I'm Marie Carey Spackman, representing the Deerfield Valley, Wilmington, Whitingham, and Halifax.
Thank you.
I'm Abby Duke. I represent parts of the old and new north ends of Burlington.
Hi, Edie Granning, representing Jericho and Underhill and the vice chair of the committee.
And Mike Marcotte from Coventry, representing Coventry, Irisburg, Newport Town, Troy, Jay, Westfield, Lowell, and Eden, and chair of the committee.
Monique Priestley, Bradford, Fairleigh, West Fairleigh.
Michael Booton, Berry City. Tony Mickless, representing most of Milton and a little bit of Georgia.
Dave Bosch from Clarendon Springs, representing Wallingford, Clarendon, West Rutland, and the bulk of Rutland Town.
Thank you.
That's the committee, and welcome.
Thank you very much. And my name is Scott Giles, and I'm the president and CEO of the Vermont Student Assistance Corporation. And one question I have, I submitted some slides. Do I need to kind of drive on Zoom, or is that something that, let me see if I can get permission to share.
Thank you, the co-host.
Okay. We can do that. I'll share. See if that has come up. Are you seeing my screen? I can't tell.
Not yet.
I should be able to do this, but it appears not to be. There we go.
While you're doing that, I forget. The most important person in the room hasn't introduced herself yet either.
Anna Grace. Bet you're written.
We've been meeting virtually, and for whatever reason, I'm having technical issues here getting that share to.
It's like that.
Oh, it's not there.
Success. Ish.
There we go.
Ish.
Case in point, how valuable she is.
Brand new biennium, and once in a while, I'm here to talk a little bit about our support for people that are pursuing technical degrees. I've demonstrated my own lack of technical proficiency. So let me just kick things off, particularly for new members of the committee, and start off by offering my appreciation for the very, very close working relationship that VSAC has enjoyed with this committee over many years, but in particular over the course of the last 5 years, where we have, worked very, very closely together on a number of really important initiatives. And, I'll say this in this particular context because everybody knows VSAC based off of the program that they participated in, or they touched. And we were created back in 1965. This year is actually going to be our 60th anniversary, predominantly as a college access organization. And I'll talk a little bit about the evolution of our programs over time. But with the support of this committee and the legislature, we've expanded our reach so that we are, more than being about just supporting students pursuing traditional post-secondary education. And as I said, with this committee's support, have really expanded the support that we are providing to Vermonters that are seeking education or training that doesn't lead to a degree, but leads directly to a high wage job. So what I thought I would do is really provide a very, very brief overview and then turn to some programs that we collaborated very, very closely with you, provide some updates. What I am not doing as part of this presentation is, kind of providing our budget request at this point. I think like everybody, we're waiting to see what the governor includes within that request. And I am hoping that we'll have an opportunity to come back and talk about that, at an appropriate time. For those that are new, I mentioned that, we were created essentially to serve as the one-stop shop for Vermonters. And I want to emphasize of all ages. I'm going to spend some time in particular talking about adults and the work that we do with adult students here. But we administer the College 529 plan, which is the college savings plan. Importantly, from our perspective, as a result of some changes that were made at the federal level several years ago, and corresponding changes made by the legislature, the 529 plan also supports some of the expenses associated with registered apprenticeships. So it allows us now to use that as a vehicle for supporting students that are interested in, pursuing the trades kind of directly through an apprenticeship model. We're perhaps most well known in many ways for the career and education counseling. We have counselors working in every middle school, nearly every middle school and high school in the state. These programs are funded almost entirely with federal grants that are matched by the revenue that VSAC brings in through our student loan programs and other things. And it is probably in the core way that we reach out to students. We also have a program, and I'm going to touch on this a little bit later on, that specializes in adults. So we have counselors that are working and living within your communities and in regions, serving adults across the state. We provide financial aid and forums nights, both in person and virtually. In your state, we are in virtually every high school, helping students of all ages apply for financial aid, both at the state and federal level. We administer a state grant program for low-income Vermonters. It's our biggest, largest state-funded program. It's a need-based aid program that supports students pursuing any education that they are interested in pursuing. We administer the 802 Opportunity Grant, which is something that this committee worked with us on creating. This has allowed any student coming from a family earning $75,000 or less to be able to pursue their education at CCV, tuition and fee free, effectively. Been incredibly successful program. We administer a list of workforce incentive programs that I'm going to spend more time talking about. We also administer 140 private scholarship programs. So that can be everything from your local Rotary Club that has raised money for a couple $1,000 scholarship and wants assistance administering that and selecting candidates, to the Curtis Fund, which is one of our largest foundation-based contributors that is providing over $1.5 million a year in scholarships. And importantly, with Curtis, I think importantly for this committee, we piloted with Curtis a non-degree credential scholarship program that we can use as a supplement to the state money that we have with your support. And then, as I mentioned, although I won't spend much time talking about those core programs today, we do provide a state-based student loan program that is provided with money that we raise in the bond market. So we have access to tax-exempt financing. Those bonds are not obligations of the state of Vermont. They're not technically, they're not obligations of ours. They're securitized. And what this allows us to do is to offer loans to students that are pursuing education or training at a rate that is substantially lower than the commercial market would provide. And regrettably, at this point, oftentimes even lower than the federal government and its core student loan program is providing. What I'd love to do is start talking about the advancement grant first, if we might. One of the things that, I think from a kind of historic perspective, VSAC learned over time is that we were created with a focus on, middle school and high school students. And then in the 80s, when the economy in Vermont really started to change, there was heightened interest particularly in the Connecticut Valley with what was happening with the tooling industry, and providing a resource for helping individuals that were being dislocated as a result of the loss of those jobs, retrain. And from that was created the non-degree grant, which this committee worked with us and renamed the advancement grant, which we all agreed was a much better name, and gets and is much more understandable for folks. With your support, we were actually able to increase the funding for that program pretty substantially, to the point where we are now awarding about $3.7 million a year in grants. This grant is a grant for adults. So this is individuals who are interested in pursuing non-degree credentials. So they're not interested at this point in pursuing, a 2-year or a 4-year degree. We've got other grant resources that are available for them, but they're interested in obtaining the education or training they'll need to get a better job. Often we encounter them because something has happened within their personal or their work life. They've lost a job. But I tell this story often because kind of one of my favorites. 2 years ago, I was meeting with a woman down in the Brattleboro area. She'd been working with a landscaping company all of her career. She was about 63 at that point. Her back was starting to kind of give out. It was clear that she wasn't going to be able to do that heavy physical labor for as long as she needed to. She didn't have the money to be able to retire. She was able to use the advancement grant to get a certificate in bookkeeping through CCV, really at no cost to herself. When her employer discovered that that was what she was doing, her employer needed a bookkeeper. And so she was able to transition immediately into working, kind of for her own company, doing bookkeeping work that she can continue to do as long as she decides that she needs to. And I think of that as capturing really the heart and spirit of the advancement grant. I mentioned here, people will use it to get truck driver's license, CDLs, obtain certification as childcare providers. And it's also, the typical recipient is 35 years old. To put this in perspective, household of 2, we have a lot of single mothers in particular taking advantage of this. And for many of them, it is that first pathway into, a career path that is sustainable over time. We will often see in healthcare in particular, somebody will use this to get a certificate in phlebotomy. Healthcare is an area where we've got stackable credentials. Start in phlebotomy, get that $17 an hour job, continue to be able to work almost immediately. It's short term. And then oftentimes their employer will be interested in seeing them pursue the next step, which might be an LNA, which they can continue to both work and get the credentials. And importantly, the subsequent credential recognizes the work they've done beforehand, so they're not starting from scratch. So the advancement grant has become a very, very powerful tool in our healthcare talent pipeline for bringing people in to really areas where we've got critical shortages. The Vermont Trades Program, this is a slightly different program and one that this committee was instrumental in helping us create. The model for this is a little different. So the advancement grant is a pure need-based grant. So only, kind of low income individuals can participate and only adults in that program. The Vermont Trades Program was designed to respond to the critical workforce shortages that the state faces. You are eligible for it if you are a 19-year-old or 18 or 19-year-old, coming out of high school, interested in pursuing a career in the trades, or you're eligible for it as an adult. And the income threshold is higher. It's at $100,000 in terms of family income for many of these programs, but not for all. And the award amounts are higher. In exchange for that, we've structured it, with your support, as a forgivable loan, which is a model that we have been using kind of across workforce areas. What does that mean? We will offer you kind of up to kind of full tuition and fees in the program that you are pursuing in exchange for a commitment to work in Vermont for 1 year as a licensed professional in that field for each year that you received support. excuse me. We've kind of listed here, this program has been growing pretty rapidly. In 23, we dispersed over $1 million to 163 students, representing every Vermont county. In 24, we dispersed almost $2.5 million in that program to 242 students. And it has been a very, very powerful tool for helping us be able to attract individuals that are interested in pursuing some of the higher cost trades. You know, for example, linemen are, you know, that's a career that we are in, you know, kind of desperate short supply of. Talk to Green Mountain Power or Velco or any of the others. The only lineman school in the area is really down in Georgia. It's an expensive program. This has been an incredibly powerful tool for allowing us to support those individuals in exchange for that commitment to come back in Vermont. What I'd love to do is touch on 802 Opportunity, another program that this community is involved in. And I'll make a couple of observations about the power of this program and then be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So we often talk about the access challenges that the state has. A lot of conversation within the education committee about the low continuation rate of students leaving high school and going directly into college, and I'd be happy to talk more about that. But when VSAC looked at that data in partnership with this committee, the thing that we noticed was that where that biggest gap existed was in 2 years. Students pursuing education or training at 2-year institutions. And from that came the opportunity for 802 Opportunity. What is particularly powerful about this from a workforce perspective is that CCV is offering a range of apprenticeships, certificates, and 2-year degree programs that allow individuals to take their courses at night at any time that is convenient for their schedule. It allows them to participate in those programs while continuing to work, if that's the path that they want to pursue. And it provides a full range of short-term training programs. I mentioned the bookkeeping program as an example, the bookkeeping certificate. But CCV really has excelled at providing short-term programs that lead to substantial kind of wage increases. One of the things that was really powerful about this from an institutional perspective is that during the pandemic, which is when we started this program, community colleges across the country saw about a 30% decline in enrollment. CCV, in contrast, actually saw an increase in enrollment. So one of the things this program was able to do during that period of time was keep individuals that had started the process of upskilling in order to be able to fill new jobs. We were able to keep them actively pursuing their goals and dreams. And at this point, more than 2,600 Vermonters are participating on an annual basis and getting their education or training really tuition free. Every county is participating. Most of them are first generation. Because it's CCV, most of them are adult, but not all of them. And 16% of them identify as being persons of color or Hispanic, which I believe shows the power of the message behind this program for really increasing and diversifying opportunities within our communities. Success effect. I'm not going to spend much time talking about this in this context, but we got an unexpected benefit from, well, I shouldn't say it was unexpected, but it happened sooner than we were anticipating. And this data is really fresh from CCV right now. They were getting ready to do a programmatic review as part of their strategic planning. And they noticed an anomaly. I mentioned that we administer a series of federal grants that allow us to provide career and education counseling. But we're only able to support, from a capacity perspective, about 20% of the eligible population because of those financing constraints. So there are people that we are working closely with who are, income and generational eligible, but don't receive the full range of benefits. And what we discovered was that those students who we were not able to serve, or CCV was not able to serve through their TRIO program, but who received 802 Opportunity, were almost 10 to 15% more likely to actually complete, graduate, and transfer. So we're seeing this very, very powerful impact of 802 Opportunity on student success, but not just for the groups that we are spending, kind of a fair amount of time directly supporting it. We're seeing it in a community that has great need, but is, for whatever reason, not receiving the full range of support. So it's very, very exciting for us. This is really new information and something that I think the committee should be very, very proud of in terms of the work that you all did. Chair Marcotte, I kind of was talking with Vice Chair Granning and said I wasn't going to do our budget presentation because I was hoping that I'd get the opportunity to come back and do that once the governor's budget came back, but I will give a teaser. One of the things that we are asking for, based on the success that we've seen with 802 Opportunity, and I'll, talk about that, is that we create an equivalent program at the Vermont State University that would allow 802 Opportunity participants the ability to seamlessly and affordably transfer to VTSU, continue their educations, and I would welcome the opportunity to come back and talk about that more. I will just say this, I think that there are 3 really powerful benefits from doing that if we're able to do it. One is clearly from a student access perspective. 2 is very clearly from a workforce perspective. I don't need to probably talk to this committee the way I may share with others, but we have 3 people applying for every 10 open jobs. And we've got, it has become very hard for us to fill what I will call the high demand, high skill jobs. And for us to be successful economically, we need to upskill and make sure that every Vermonter has access to the skills they need to fill those positions. And then lastly, I'll say from an institutional perspective, all of us are very vested in the success of the Vermont State University. The legislature has committed a lot of time and resource. And that data that I shared before about 802 Opportunity and the power, what that meant for retention and graduation rates, has very, very concrete budget and financial implications for CCV. And we anticipate that this program would have the same benefits for the state university and would become a core part of our, I think, combined strategy for continuing to move them not just from solvency, but to kind of being a vibrant institution. And this proposal, you'll hear about this from the Vermont State University if you've not had them in yet. Opening doors for adult learners. I did want to touch on what we call our Educational Opportunity Center, which is our adult counseling program. And this is just a reminder that as you are working with your own constituents, if you've got somebody that has, experiencing a job setback, if they are, trying to figure out what to do next, something has happened, know that VSAC has individuals, we have counselors across the state who specialize in meeting with adults. And their job is to do very, very preliminary career counseling. I will say we partner very closely with the Department of Labor and do co-training so that we are familiar with their programs and they're familiar, with our programs. But this is one of our most successful programs, and we can share lots of data. But 80% of the individuals that we work with, and these are first generation and low income adults, will end up successfully enrolled in post-secondary education or training. So we kind of combine those two for our own metrics. And it has become one of the kind of core pathways for individuals that have hit a dead end and are looking to kind of reboot their careers. Touch on something that we are very excited about that is kind of brand new for us. We have always, worked with individuals that had learning differences and other challenges. But we have forged this year a new partnership with Hireability Vermont. They did an RFP to allow them to kind of test the market and seek a full range of partners. They selected us. This is not a new partnership, but this is a much stronger partnership than we've enjoyed in the past. And I'll just say, why is this important? Our economy needs every Vermonter to be a productive, contributing member of that community. And we have a shared interest in making sure that those that face the greatest challenges to being able to do that. are able to obtain the education and training they need in order to be successful. And this is going to allow both our organizations to learn from each other and leverage the expertise, knowledge, and the financial resources we each bring to bear to kind of support these students. And then I'm coming close to the end of my presentation, and I would be happy to open things up. But with this committee, we mentioned the trades program that was structured as a forgivable loan program. With the support of this committee and the legislature, we are administering now a pretty broad range of these forgivable loan programs, all largely structured the same way, initially modeled after our nursing program, which was the oldest program that we had, with which we had the most experience. So we have a nursing forgivable loan program, the trades forgivable loan scholarship. We do partner with the National Guard and administer their program for them. They set the policies. We do the administrative side of selecting and supporting folks. We have a dentist forgivable loan incentive program, a mental health professional forgivable loan program. I'll flag that one in part because it was funded with one-time money during the pandemic. And this year we have now fully expended that. So that program will not exist next year unless the legislature decides to continue it. We launched a teacher forgivable loan program that we partnered with you and the Education Committee on, a dental hygienist, nurse faculty, and psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. One thing I will just say in advance is that all of these programs are relatively new with the exception of nursing. So we are just hitting the period when folks will be in a position to fulfill their work obligations. So we're preparing our own process for doing evaluation and are hoping next year to be able to provide the committee with some preliminary data regarding kind of work practices and, you know, where folks are located. I did want to touch on something that I don't think that we have shared with you before, that is not state funded, at least not in the purest sense. We call it, we're great with acronyms, so we call it WOLP. It's the Workforce Opportunity Loan Program. And this is a partnership that we have started with the Vermont hospitals. Vermont faces a nursing shortage. We have the Nursing Forgivable Loan Program that has gone from, $60,000 at the onset of the pandemic to $3 million. Even with that $3 million, that increase to $3 million, there are about 350 potential nurses that we were unable to fund, last year. And the nature of the challenge that we face is going to require all parties to participate. There's no one single answer to this. And we know that as we talk about healthcare costs, the cost of travelers is an incredible part of that. I think the auditor of accounts indicated that UVMHN was spending almost $70 million a year on travelers, and the hospital network across the state was spending $100 million in order to make sure that they had the nursing staffing to be able to, kind of provide the care that Vermonters deserve. So this led, in partnership with the Vermont Business Roundtable, the kind of the coalition of Vermont hospitals, and with the support of an earmark that the Business Roundtable received from the Vermont delegation, we've created a new program. And effectively, the way this program works is that the hospital takes a look at its current employees, many of whom are not serving in clinical positions, who they think have the ability and the talent to be effective clinicians. They identify those employees, and then they effectively pay for the education or training that will be required for them to pursue respiratory therapy or nursing. Those are the two programs that we're piloting right now. VSAC does all of the work. We do career and education counseling. We weave together the financial aid that is available to support individuals. We braid that all together. And then we issue a loan to that individual that the hospital commits to pay off in increments for each year that that individual works for the hospital once they have received their education or training. And it grew from 2 hospitals up to 6. We've got UVM MC, we've got Southern Vermont, we've got Gifford, Mount Escutney, Cedar Hill, NVRH. And we've gone from 21 nursing students to about 80 in the 2 years that we have, launched this particular program. The reason that I mentioned it is not in part because we are looking for anything, from the committee at this point, but we're interested in exploring whether or not this is a model that we can use in some of the other areas where there are acute shortages from a labor perspective, and employers are paying a high premium in order to be able to, make up the costs in order to be able to get the employees that they need in place. So we're excited about this as a potential model. It's gotten some national attention, as well. And certainly within the medical arena, I think there are other places. Respiratory therapy is the one that we started, with. Nursing is another one. There are some other career spots that I think we can probably develop comparable programs to. What I will say we are proudest about is that this is a true partnership between the employer community, VSAC, and the education community, because CCV and VTC or Vermont State University now are all collaborating together to create apprenticeship-like models that allow people to be able to get the expertise that they need, continue to work, and each one of us has had to flex in order to make this program work, and that's always the sign of a great partnership. The last thing that I just wanted to remind the committee is that we have a small but mighty research team that does most of the post-secondary education access research that the legislature relies on, and AOE and the governor's team rely on. We've got data sharing agreements with the Agency of Education. We've got, as the state grant program administrator, access to all the financial aid data that the federal government both obtains and shares with us for the administration, of our programs. And we do something called the senior survey every 2 years, where we actually attempt to survey every high school senior in the state. About half of that survey is about their experience, their educational experience. But the other half is designed to give us insight into what they're thinking about their futures and what are the things that are shaping their futures. What are they thinking about career? What are they thinking about education? Where are they getting their information? And we use that information both to drive changes in our programs and policies, but to support the work of this committee and others. And so I've taken up a bunch of time. I'm going to stop there and see if I have created any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Question, Scott?
It actually pertains to one of your most recent slides about the WOLP. You mentioned, I think, it's approximately $100 million a year in spending on travelers. Is there any data, or might there be data forthcoming about the cost savings that are coming back to Vermont with investments in this program, leading to a decline in some millions of dollars in traveling expenditures?
We don't have that yet, but I think we could, for an initial proxy, we can take a look at, we can work with the hospitals. I'm sure they can give us information regarding how many fewer travelers are being hired as a result of the individuals that are coming through this program. So I'd be happy to come back and get some information.
Is there any interest or discussion or recruitment going on with the other hospitals in the
Yes.
state?
Yes.
So that is inactive. Now, is that a bilateral thing? Or are you reaching out to them, or are they seeing it and getting interested on their own?
It's both.
What are the waters? Look
Yeah,
like?
no, it's both. And, we started this as a pilot with just 2 institutions as a test case, just because we needed something that was manageable as we ran this, the first time. I think we've been working very, very closely with the full network of hospitals, with the Association of Hospitals. We've participated in presentations with them. And this program was part of a broader Vermont Talent Pipeline initiative that all of the hospitals have been participating, where they were sharing information about what their workforce needs are. What we are seeing is that, hospitals are watching this kind of the success of this program. Some were waiting, right, to see whether or not this was going to be successful. My understanding is we've got two others that are paying attention to what is happening and are exploring whether or not they want to join. At this point, from a capacity perspective, we're welcoming anybody who's interested in participating.
It's really more of a comment. I think the WOLP program sounds very exciting, and I commend you on pulling that together in terms of bringing the employer with the government resources and BSAC's resources. And I'm excited to see the results and see the data and see the impact. And I can imagine that is a model that could apply very well to some other employers that are very anxious to invest in their workforce, and having a way like that also provides accountability, I think is really tremendous.
I think that's something that we had talked about in here is, we're putting skin in the game. How do we get the employer to put skin in the game too?
Yeah.
That provides, a blended method of trying to get these people through school, and get them with much lower debt, or maybe no debt at all, hopefully by the time they get to work again. And so it's, I think it's a combination of us setting, kind of getting the word out, and then, working with BZAC and others. It's tremendous. It's amazing what has been done and what has really this opportunity that has come to us because of the pandemic. Because we've had to really think about different ways of getting people the jobs that they need, and the people that our businesses need too. So it's been it looks like starting to pay dividends.
Getting back to the Vermont programs for high demand occupations, you mentioned you were 350 short on nurses. Is there any sort of outreach regionally or nationally, to bring other people, talent from other states, even possibly other countries, to help fill these positions?
I would defer to the hospitals themselves from a recruiting perspective. I do believe that they're recruiting as aggressively as they can. The nursing shortage is one that, my understanding, is not just regional, but it's national. So there's a lot of competition, which is in part why the expense on travelers has been so high, and secondarily why it is that we are looking at whether or not we can at least partially grow grow our workforce from within, by attracting people who had not been considering these careers, but already have a relationship with the employer in some way. And that's why we're excited about WOLP. On the other programs, what I will say is that the way that the Nursing Forgivable Loan Program is constructed, though we have not had the resources to do this, we have a priority list that we go through. But if there were unlimited resources, if you were a student from out of state, attending an institution in New York, but were willing to commit to work in Vermont, the program is designed to allow us to make that award, but we are prioritizing individuals that are Vermonters or attending a Vermont institution first, and we don't make it all the way through that list before we get there. But the program design would incorporate that.
Interesting.
Just a question about how you get the word out to students about like the 802 opportunity grant and like all the various other grant programs.
So it's a belts and suspenders effort that involves, I think three platforms.
Okay.
So we are working in, we've got counselors working directly in nearly every middle school and high school in the state. And we are doing a full range of events statewide, regionally. We do I'm focusing on event related things first. Our college and career planning, our main events. We do around the state located on a campus. The high schools will send students to those particular programs. I think this last year, I get my numbers wrong, but I think we had nearly 3,000 students last year participating in that. We also are working very, very closely with the school counselor community there to reinforce the kind of range of resources that are available to them. And then I'm going to touch on 802 opportunity in a minute. And then we partner really closely with the Vermont colleges and universities so that they're providing that education. And my different channels for traditional age students and parents and for adults, because you're looking at, different networks, there in part. And then we are doing what I would call more traditional social media and, marketing and advertising. That is designed to say, not only are these resources available, but we're here to help you access them. So you don't have to figure all of this out yourself. We're always looking for partners to amplify, those messages and talk more about that. One of the things that we learned, I will say about 802 Opportunity that was really important and that has led to more growth is the clarity of that message, that if you come from a family that earns $75,000 or less, this is, tuition free. And another kind of lean in, I will say that our budget request for the governor includes increasing that income threshold to 100,000. But that message, one of the things that message did was it unlocked the school counselor community in a way that the complexities of our other aid programs made them I don't want to say that made them uncomfortable because we train them every year, but they will look at a student and not know for sure whether they're going to be eligible for some of the need-based aid. And that makes them a little hesitant to say anything other than, hey, there's a VSAC counselor here, go talk to them. With 802 Opportunity, within most of our schools, they have a really clear sense in their mind as to whether or not their family falls beneath the threshold, or maybe off a little bit. But and so part of what we saw was that clarity of message and simplicity meant that the school counselors and teachers are playing a really big role in that, in making sure that message is out, as is CCV. So Joyce, Judy, and I are crisscrossing the state. I did 15 radio interviews in the fall about 802 Opportunity, trying to get the adult and the parent community during drive time. Social media everywhere. Front Porch Forum, everywhere. But suggestions, if there is a platform that we are missing, would love to hear it.
I think you're 802 Opportunity. It's not just paying for the school, but it's all the wraparound services too. That's, I think, what's made it so successful. That, helps with transportation, books, food, whatever. So that gives people that opportunity to be able to get a degree or to get their associates anyway. And, or get certifications that they need. But it just lifts people up. It's what we really need.
I mean, I can't tell you, they come in, I can't tell you how transformative the combination of these programs have been. If you think about the work that you have done over the course of the last several years, the expansion of the advancement grant literally doubled the number of people, of adults that we were supporting getting certification. We added the trades forgivable loan program, on top of that, which has opened another door. And then we layered 802 Opportunity on top of that. Vermont really right now, we probably don't tell our story as well as we could because we're so focused on reaching the community that needs the support, not telling other people about it. But this is transformative because we've gone from a place where access to education and training was a real struggle. And it's not that there aren't challenges and that there is that lower middle income family, which is why 802 Opportunity is so powerful. Because with 802 Opportunity right now, it's half of all households. And it's a little more than half of all households now. This has been transformative work at the individual level. And I think it's going to prove to be transformative at the state level. Our face is, down with the student.
Go ahead.
So I'm thinking about this, I don't know, a little bit broader, and I'm sure you don't have the answer, but I'm wondering if you have thoughts. We have a really high high school graduation rate in the state. We have a low uptake on continuing education post high school. You're in with the students all the time, right? So I know we're making a difference. I know we're making inroads. I know we're giving people opportunity. What else do we need to do? Where are we missing the boat? What are you hearing from the students who you're touching that are just like, not me, right?
I think there are a couple answers to that I would offer preliminarily, and it's part of a longer conversation and one that we as an organization are actually spending a lot of time with our higher education partners thinking about. So I will start with just a broad number issue, historically. Now, you may have heard we had two anomalies last year that nationally, we had two anomalies last year, which provided qualification to my answer on that. And one is that the federal application for financial aid, you may or may not have heard if you weren't living this, they completely bungled the rollout. The good news from a Vermont perspective is that we'd anticipated that was coming. I spent 20 years in DC before I was here, so I shouldn't confess that at the moment. But so we were able to do some insulation against that, but everybody lost a lot of students because literally an application that should have been up in October 2 years ago really didn't come up until May. I mean, they pretended it did, but so people were on the only people that got through were people who had families that could spend 2 hours on the phone.
Yeah.
Or had an outreach counselor.
Yeah.
And that's a group that, and we're proud of the fact that we worked our way, we were down 8,000 apps in May when they done this. And between May and September, we were able to get 900 of them back, nearly going door to door. So our numbers are skewed right now. And then the National Clearinghouse, which does enrollment data, just fessed up that they completely screwed up their data release. So nationally, we thought there was a large decline in first-year students, and it turns out there was a 5% increase. And they're busy disaggregating the data so that we can try and look at the state level. So with that noise there, what I want to say is this. When we take a look historically at the college going rate in Vermont, in response to you, what we saw when we broke it down was that our 4-year college going rate was above the national average. That's kind of a New England thing. And our 2-year college going rate was well below the national average. It was lower than New England. This is also a New England phenomenon, but it was about half the national average. And so 802 Opportunity in part was designed to target what we saw from a data perspective was where that gap, really was. Knowing also that it would help adult students that we had lost through this process, but at 26, suddenly discovered that the path that they were on that didn't involve education or training wasn't working for them. So I think of 802 Opportunity as kind of serving two functions. It allows us to speak really clearly to that group that needs that and is on the fence and knows it. And then kind of, I don't want to call it recovery, but it allows us to go back into that 26-year-old that has kind of bottomed out with what they have. So I think that we want to see what 802 Opportunity does in terms of that 2-year college going rate over time. The thing we do have going on right now is a debate about the value of post-secondary education that has two components to it. One is a pure cost student debt conversation. That is a conversation about individuals that, have borrowed a lot of money in order to pursue their education, and have some profound regrets about the choices, that they made. And then there's a second group. It's not that they're unrelated, but when we're talking to students, we hear something different. And that is a more essential question about the value of post-secondary education. And that is a question that is, for the one group, it's education is critical to my future, but it's too expensive and I can't afford the debt that's involved. This other group is saying, I'm not sure that higher education is going to give me the things that I need in order to be successful in my chosen career. And that is existed for a while, but it's a new phenomena and it's more pronounced than it was before. And in particular, we are hearing it from young men. And so higher education has had a boys problem for decades. We've been tracking this with our data. But in coming into the pandemic, that became much, much more pronounced. And we're going to be sharing some more data from our most recent senior survey that shows how profoundly they're questioning the value of traditional post-secondary education. So what is the solution to that? The old VSAC might have said our job is going to be to try and show you all the data that shows you need to pursue this path. And for those for whom that's relevant, we'll do that. What I think is going to be important is this range of other tools that you have given us. You know, you think about trades forgivable loan, the expansion of the advancement grant, and these very, very workforce-related specific programs is going to allow us to have a more nuanced conversation that says, okay, you know what, we're not going to, we hear you on this. You're not interested in this, but you are interested in this. What are you going to need in order to be successful at that thing you've decided that you want to do? And here are the tools that we have in order to support you. Going back to the question that you asked about how we communicate our programs, this is work that VSAC is going to have to work really hard at, because I go back to when we were created in 1965, people think of us as the college access organization, but we are much more than that now. And we've got a lot of work in the high schools in particular to make sure that everybody knows that. Does that help?
Yeah.
I do think a third piece of this is going to be how higher education responds to, because there is a programmatic component and work that is being done to make it clear how relevant it is that, you know, what I'll call, you know, what our institutions are offering that are more than just the traditional kind of four-year liberal arts programs, which I am the beneficiary of. I believe wholeheartedly in them. But I also recognize that that's not, you know, what everybody is interested in. And I'll add one piece that I think is going to be critical to this, and that is the stackability of credentials. We talked about how healthcare we have that stackability. One of the things we've been talking about in higher ed is this conversation. I was down at one of the tech centers, and they will poke at me appropriately when I say that everybody's going to need education or training after high school to be successful. They'll point out, coming out of the tech centers, young gentleman was, you know, all on the pathway to becoming a master plumber. It's going to be awesome. And there was a young woman who's going to be an electrician. So two of them are there. And I said, what are you going to be doing? You know, what work? And both of them were going to go work for family businesses. So ironically, they both had an uncle. You know, that one had an electrical shop and the other had a plumbing shop. And I said, do you want to work for them, you know, forever? And both of them said, no, you know, at some point I want to own my own, you know, I want to be my own person. And that's where we need to get better at asking the question. So what do you think you're going to need in order to be successful at that? Because we're good right now at providing those technical skills that will make them, and we need them there, right? But we also want them to become the next generation of business owner who is going to have to know enough about bookkeeping in order to be, you know, probably a bit about HR. You're going to need marketing. You know, we start to ask those questions, and what I think is going to be partially the answer to your question is going to be how we in higher ed, you know, I'm wearing my higher ed, not my workforce hat, purely adapt to say to that individual when they are ready, we have this program for you that is just tailored. You want to become the small business leader, we're going to give you. I think that's what success looks like.
I appreciate that flexible thinking, and, you know, the gig economy now is different from what the economy has been in the past. And thank you.
Yeah, and I think we're going to move into that model where people are going to be coming in and out of education. And we've talked about this before, but we as a system haven't really done it, with the exception of the advancement grant and now trades. Those are actually allowing us to help adults, work, train, reskill, work, reskill. That's powerful.
Is there a group, kind of working on that kind of systems thinking? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is that, I know people are thinking about it, but is there any kind of a working group?
Nothing formally that, well, I want to be careful about that. I think that'd be a great conversation to have with Beth Malk, the chancellor of the Vermont State University, or the Vermont State Colleges. Because Beth is doing some really interesting thinking about how it is that the Vermont State University and CCV together, navigate this. Because if you think about where opportunity looks from both a workforce and a marketing perspective, there's some 60,000 Vermont adults with some college but no degree. Many of them have what they need, but many of them stopped out because of a family situation or something. And there's a lot of interest in figuring out how it is that we identify them and how it is that we provide them the skills that they need in order to be able to get back on their path. So I think that particularly at VTSU and the Vermont State Colleges, there's some interesting thinking, and we're in close contact with them.
I think, when we were talking about nursing and, we were looking at that, you got a funnel. And you have all these people that are interested in becoming nurses, and then all of a sudden that funnel becomes constrained. And, just a few years ago, in last year, the previous year, just talking with Vermont State Colleges, that they were only able to put through 181 students through their nursing program in 1 year. But they had, maybe 400, 500, 600 applicants. And we heard from the chancellor this year that they put through over 500 or near 600 now. So that funnel is starting to open up, because we identified a lot of the issues, trying to get people through that. And so I think we're going to continue to see that, especially with nursing. There's such a need, but it's starting to work. And I think, things that a VSAC is doing, and what the colleges are doing to try to open that up, seem to be working. So things are not where they need to be, but they're much better than they were just a couple of years ago. I think that as we go forward, we'll keep working with VSAC, and we need to have our conversations with, of course, our healthcare committee when it comes to any of those types of programs, and with appropriations. But we're certainly going to have you back in, Scott, during the appropriations process, and look, start digging into the data, and so that we can put give a positive report to the appropriations. I just wanted to let everybody know too, as we wrap up, that received a letter today from Megan Oliver. That's Representative Oliver's daughter, but she's going to become a dental hygienist and is using this program as well. And it's really made a difference in her going to school. It's helping her figure out how she's going to pay her loans off. It keeps her here in Vermont. It made her father really happy.
It's funny how that makes us all happy when we can get our kids to come back.
So I'll pass this letter around to the committee too, because it's really, strikes home of what we do. So with that, Scott, thank you for coming in. It was a good conversation for the last hour, and I think we probably could go for another hour or two talking with you, but we'll certainly have you back in during the appropriations process.
Thank you very much. And once again, we've enjoyed such a great partnership together, with the committee for quite some time. We've, can't declare victory, but we have a lot to be proud of.
Making a lot of difference in Vermonters' lives. Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit, but not a lot. We have the Department of Labor with us.
Everyone else is waiting outside, I gotta come in and see.
See if it's hostile or not.
Well, no.
Let's see if there's space.
Yeah, I'm
Maybe see Betsy Ann super quick and I'll be right back.
Now I'm following Wolfsack, I don't know.
That is a tough one to follow.
It's going to be.